Hey everybody, it's the Jimmy Dore Show. I'm Aaron Maté, sitting in for Jimmy, here with Matt Taibbi, independent journalist who writes at taibbi.substack.com and the lead reporter on the Twitter Files. So Matt, let's go through this one. You write in the Twitter Files thread, you write, remember the 2017 internal guidance in which Twitter decided to remove any user identified by the U.S. intelligence community as a state-sponsored entity committing cyber operations? By 2020, such identifications came in bulk. So talk to us about what's happening here.
So in 2017, and we may talk about that or not, but basically Twitter had a huge struggle dealing with the government back then over the Russiagate scandal. And they eventually came to this decision that I think was pretty significant, this internal guidance where they said publicly, we're going to say we only remove content at our sole discretion. That's explicitly what they say. But internally, the guidance is any user identified by the U.S. Intelligence Committee as a foreign state actor committing cyber operations will be removed. So they're essentially saying that privately, if the intelligence community fingers an account and says we want to get rid of that, we're going to do it. And that basically committed them to this endless cycle of moderation requests.
All right. So one of them is a new case of U.S. intelligence officials trying to censor reporting on anything critical of the Biden family and their dealings inside of Ukraine. We know from before, and this is the well-publicized case, where before the 2020 election, the social media giants like Twitter censored reporting on the Hunter Biden laptop, which contained information about his business dealings, on the fake grounds that it could be Russian disinformation, right? So you have a new case here where you say that U.S. intelligence officials warned Twitter about publicity surrounding a book by former Ukraine prosecutor Viktor Shokin, who alleged corruption by the U.S. government, specifically by Joe Biden. Now, Shokin, as a reminder to people, he was the prosecutor who was investigating Burisma in Ukraine. And who is Burisma? Burisma is the company that shortly after the 2014 U.S.-backed coup, which Joe Biden's government was involved in Ukraine, Burisma hired Hunter Biden to their board, making something like $80,000 a month. And what Shokin alleged was that basically Burisma hired Biden to help shield Burisma from his own office's scrutiny. And he wrote a book about it. And here is Twitter getting a warning about that book, about how it really could be some sort of Russian intelligence operation. So let's read from some of what Twitter was told. This is a U.S. intelligence assessment that was shared with Twitter. We assess with high confidence that in the summer of 2020, members of a Russian influence organization, which is at least partially directed by Russian intelligence, were aware of a production plan associated with an upcoming book authored by former Ukrainian prosecutor general Viktor Shokin. So this is tough to follow.
They were aware.
So some influence organization, which they don't define, which is partially connected to Russian intelligence, they're aware of a book that's about to come out. Wow. Big bombshell. But apparently that's on, in their eyes, grounds for censorship. So let's go on with this. We have information that indicates that the book is intended to reveal corruption allegedly perpetrated by the U.S. and Ukraine, and that the intended audience includes political institutions in the U.S., Europe, and Ukraine. Versions of the book could be released in Russian, Ukrainian, and English this fall. So, wow. A book is going to come out, and it might reveal corruption by U.S. figures, namely Joe Biden and his family in Ukraine.
Yeah, and that's your guidance, right? So to be perfectly fair about this, like I was not able to determine which government agency this came from. I could tell that it came through the FBI, but there were a lot of these documents that are sort of marked OGA or weren't marked at all, and simply came through, the belly button either through teleporter or through Signal to Twitter. This was actually retrieved from the laptop of one of the senior executives who left. But unquestionably, there were so many of these reports where they would say something extremely vague, like we have indications that this is connected to the IRA, the Internet Research Agency, and then they would send a list of accounts, and you were just supposed to say, well, they assessed it, so it must be true. And I guess in this case, they didn't even send a list, but it was for their information. Like if you want to take action against any tweets that might have to do with Shokin's book, we're sort of encouraging you to do so, which I think is pretty insidious.
Yes, and they do acknowledge that they actually have no evidence. So this is the final excerpt of this that we have. And this is, again, a U.S. intelligence assessment shared with Twitter. While it is unclear at this time how involved Russian intelligence might be in the creation or promotion of this book, this is always what happens. There's always a caveat acknowledging that they have no evidence, or at least it happens very often in anything to do with Russiagate. They have been known to direct this same influence organization to propagate similar information in previous operations. As such, we wanted to highlight the potential nexus between this book and Russian intelligence, and we suspect the book could be promoted online via foreign-controlled or inauthentic accounts. And this is the playbook that goes back to 2016, when instead of focusing on the content of the DNC leaks, the corruption by Hillary Clinton, the bias against Bernie Sanders, it was just we were endlessly told that this was all the product of Russia, and accordingly, we should not listen to it. It should even be censored. And in fact, back then, Facebook actually blocked some links to the DNC leaks from WikiLeaks back in 2016, which has been overlooked in this. But so there's a precedent there. But it's the same playbook we're getting, and it was recycled for 2020 with Joe Biden and questions about his corruption. And the way to silence them was simply to say that all this is the product of Russia.
Yeah, and we found other documents like this. Like there were documents that talked about, for instance, the theme of neo-Nazis in Ukraine, right? And they warned about material that suggested that the Biden family was involved in corruption in Ukraine, or that Joe Biden helped his son get a no-show job at an energy company. And sometimes they would pass along a list of names, sometimes not. But how do you defend against, we assess there is a nexus? I mean, like, what could be more vague than that, right? And so it's really up to the discretion of the company, but the few analyses that we've done where we're comparing lists of names and seeing how many of them ended up being, deleted, they clearly took action in, a sizable percentage of cases.
Everybody were doing live stand-up comedy in Los Angeles in January and February in Los Angeles. And then we're going to Tempe, Palm Springs, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Nashville. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets and become a premium member while you're there.